looking back to the Russo-Ukrainian war, which has been going on for, my goodness, is coming up for 8 months now. Um, Anyway, I remember it was supposed to be over in 3 days, the so-called special military operation. The war that Putin won't even call a war, he's that big a liar, criminalized people telling the plain truth, they can't use the word war, conflict or invasion about his illegal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, a country which he still recognizes as a sovereign state. So Kherson is about the furthest west in Ukraine Russian forces have penetrated. It's in southwest Ukraine, it's a little bit inland from the Black Sea coast. And Kherson city is the capital of Kherson district. It's one of the regions in which Russia staged this illegal referendum last month and claimed something like 95% of the people cast their ballots in favor of their annexation by the Russian Federation. Obviously, Russia didn't control the whole of the district when they held this ballot. Russia never allows fair votes, even to their own people, flagrantly cheats on an absolutely massive scale, and even then, be held even under Ukrainian jurisdiction. So the Kremlin has appointed a governor of Kherson district, a guy called Vladimir Saldo, and he's being issuing increasingly desperate pleas for help in evacuating civilians. And he's gone to actually posting on Telegram, on this sort of messaging app so the public can see it. Presumably this is after a lot of behind the scenes beseeching for aid. The situation is that grave. So Kherson, it lies just to the city, just to the west of the Dnipro River, and there are bridges over that river which the Ukrainians have severely damaged, but not quite destroyed. The Russians have been using pontoon bridges. So around 27,000 Russian troops west of that river, and the Ukrainians are moving forward hamlet by hamlet rather slowly and pounding them there, but not terribly heavy. It's about pinpoint accuracy. It's not just sheer volume of fire that the Ukrainians are using, because they've got these, US manufactured weapons, HIMARS, for instance, which are accurate to within a meter, have something like a 98% hit rate. But even if it explodes 2 meters, 3 meters away, it's still going to destroy the target. But they're very expensive. There are not very many of them, so they use them sparingly at military targets, unlike Russia, which is completely indiscriminate and sometimes deliberately targets civilian infrastructure, having killed about 19 civilians the other day, mostly in Kiev. But killing civilians doesn't actually degrade Ukraine's war-making ability. So I'm surprised the Ukrainians have not made more of an effort to envelop Kherson, but maybe they want to cook the Russians slowly, as it were. There's talk of them being cauldron there, because if they're cut off from supplies, from reinforcements, or indeed the ability to retreat, then they could be forced to capitulate, especially if morale is low, if they're not getting food, fuel going into winter particularly, they're running out of ammunition and so on. And remember, Russia sent its professional soldiers in first. About a third of the Russian army were contract soldiers who signed up for a 5-year contract or more, have been on their second 5-year contract. They're quite seasoned veterans, and most of those have already been killed, wounded, and captured. So NATO's estimating is about 100,000 Russians killed, wounded, or captured, or deserted. Now, some of these wounds could be just trifling, just a drop of blood and just carry on that same day, no problem. Others are seriously disabling wounds, might have limbs amputated, just might never fully recover, and they're just invalided out of the conflict. So the people they're sending into the meat grinder, as the Russians called it, are people who've been in the army years ago, who sometimes have been rushed through a fortnight's refresher course, some people who've never been in the army, and increasingly on the Russian media, these draftees are complaining about the lack of training. They have no idea what they're doing. Even the one that were in the army, it's decades ago, they're accepting men in their 50s in some cases, and technology has moved on. They don't know the weapon systems they're being issued with. Anyway, but if Kherson falls, that'll be up to 27,000 surrendering. That'll be Russia's biggest defeat for 80 years. It's not a foregone conclusion. I'm surprised how long the battle's been going on there. And it also surprised me that Putin's not said, no, we need to actually pull east of the river so that they can easily get out of there, be more easily supplied and so on. So he sort of doubled down. He's always been doubling down, never backing down. But that's gambling very heavily. If it does fall, it'll be even a heavier blow. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe it won't fall. The Russians are want to keep driving forward there, so they capture the whole of the Black Sea coast, and then Ukraine is at their mercy in terms of exporting their grain. Remember, the grain deal is coming to an end next month. It was a 90-day deal. They both signed it with the United Nations, not with each other. mediated by Turkey to ship grain out from what's it called, Chormorsk, and two other ports, Odessa, and I can't remember the other ones, across the Black Sea to Turkey, out into the Sea of Marmara, the Aegean, into the Mediterranean, all over the world. Egypt, Bangladesh, Lebanon, various other countries are heavily reliant on Ukrainian grain exports. So the fact that they're trying to evacuate civilians from Kherson shows the Russians believe they're losing control of it. And they're not talking about evacuating military personnel yet. And obviously not enough help has been given. So it's really looking bad for them. Anyway, so Ukraine claims to have regained over 400 square kilometers of Kherson district in the last week. I know that's not an awful lot. So as I say, they're going forward rather slowly. But come December, there'll be very little movement because it'll just be so cold. And it has to be sort of like -30 before various things won't work. But you don't want to be outside for too long unless you've got really Arctic weather clothing. There is so much snow, and okay, some vehicles can cope well in the snow, most cannot. Things like that. So obviously there will be campaigning in the winter. You can bombard people any day of the year. Moving forward, there will be some of that in the winter, but it won't be that much. It really will slow down. And Putin obviously thinking he can break Western resolve over the winter, that Western countries are spineless. And of course, there is some merit to his view, sadly. But you need to control people with stick and carrot. And he's tried an awful lot of stick on the Ukrainians, stick on Western countries, threatening a third world war only an hour ago. But he has to use a bit of carrot, saying, by the way, these gas taps, they could be turned back on if you behave more reasonably, Western countries, which means betraying the Ukrainians. Stop helping the Ukrainians defend themselves from his numerous atrocities, to no longer allow Ukrainian democracy to defend itself against Putin's vicious and bloodthirsty tyranny. And obviously, so countries which have been under Russian subjugation before, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Finland, and so forth, they know only too well the price of giving in, because they know if it's Ukraine today, it'll be them tomorrow. So that they're going to carry on supplying them. But there are those who are weaker-willed. Putin's hoping that new governments ushered into office in Italy, in Bulgaria, and elsewhere would be more amenable to his line. If Trump would make a comeback to the White House, that would stand him in good stead. It doesn't look likely. Trump's probably a busted flush. Hopefully be going to Supermax. I think it improbable, though. But not going to be the Republican standard bearer next time, I don't think. And even if he was, that doesn't guarantee Putin would get what he wants. So Putin's continuing to rattle the nuclear saber. But as I've said, I mean, I think he will use one, a tactical nuclear weapon, quite a small one. Could be like 20 megatons. That'd be a very small one. Maybe even over the sea, some unpopulated area, something like that. Something demonstrative. That's one of the last cards he's got to play, because if things don't improve within a month, what's he going to do? Otherwise, it is a bluff. Anyway, so we've lived with this before. Increasingly desperate, he lost a big vote in the United Nations General Assembly the other day, condemning these illegal referendums, the illegal annexations of these 4 districts. China abstained, so did India abstained. Some countries that previously abstained voted no. He got only 4 filthy countries, 4 filthy regimes on his side. Sorry, I don't want to say the countries are filthy. Belarus, North Korea, Syria, and where was it? Nicaragua. This is company you would not wish to keep. They say you can judge a man by the company he chooses. And one of the last things he could do is coerce the Belarusians to attacking in the north. Anything to cause a diversion, desperately short of soldiers, only say 25,000 soldiers in the Belarusian army, and that's all he can do. He's got sending the scrapings of prisoners forward. He's sending women to fight, because so few men are coming forward, things that he publicly pledged to never, ever do, which shows just how dire his situation is. Doesn't absolutely guarantee that Russia's going to lose the war. And what would lose even more? There might be some sort of ceasefire where they keep a little bit of Ukraine. They had 10% before this war probably began in February. They got up to 20%. They've been pushed back to maybe more like 15%. They could stop now. There'll still be a net gain when they're in February, but in some places been pushed back to where they had since 2014. Well, thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe on Patreon and donate on PayPal. GeorgeCallahan79@gmail.com. Goodbye.